Okay, since Mike suggested that I record this, I'll just go over some of the registration, the main points, so that if you want to refer to it. Okay. As far as the controller is concerned, register, because if you're having multiple roles, and I think most groups, I know that group 10 doesn't have multiple roles, you have only one role. Are they, I'm trying to go over in my head, how many others have, most groups I think have multiple roles. Okay. Is there any other group that doesn't have more than one role? You do, right? Yeah. So this is, there might be cleaner ways, but what, as I said, this is the way that I've found works, in the sense you have to prompt the user to select a particular role. Now there are, in some cases you might not want somebody to be able to select their own role, then they could make themselves like an administrator and with higher privileges. In your case, I don't know how you would some.
I believe that we blocked out the create yourself login setup. So it's going to have to be each employee will be entered by the manager and given a login.
So if it's somebody in the role of a manager, they will see register and they can.
Right, they would be able to actually populate employees underneath them. But
okay. So the first view is just to select a drop down, and once they select one, in this case register student, for example, then it basically takes them to this register student view, which is right here. And again, I've seen many groups using using these view models. Do all of you understand the benefit of a view model? Anyone having questions about a view model? A view model? Okay. The main purpose of the view model, and I'll just pull up this here. We created view models in two different cases. The first time we were looking at course prerequisites, but this view model is for registration purposes. So this was our first view model, the one that came with for the identity purposes. So you would see register view with the base information, so they want email, password to show up. So it conforms to the view. So if you see register.cshtml, so initially it would have had this register view model as the model it's referring to. Okay. And what we said was we are going to inherit from this register view model for our student view model. So whatever was pre-provided, we added the full name, and then we said these two are in addition to it for students. And then we go into our register student and say it conforms to this view model, okay, and then whatever the properties are. It also helps in formatting if it's a date or whatever else, and the password, it brings in that particular formatting. And then when you're going to the controller, when I'm sending the student, you can bind it to whatever properties are there through the view model. So you're bringing the values in, and then associating it and creating the new student object. So the view model's benefit is that it's not defined in the regular model, but you're associating it with a view so that it formats the view, whatever the text boxes or calendar and so on, and then it makes it easier to get the values into the controller and use it. Okay, so if you have that, and here this is for the additional piece here was for the photograph. So the way you add the photo, there are a couple of things to note. One is the file type. The input type is file. So that's one thing to keep note of. The other is you have to provide an ID that conforms to whatever you're using as your parameter here. So, and this is a particular type of whatever HTTP posted file base that you're referring to. So those are some. And the other thing which is which may not be obvious if you are working with files, you have to have this included in your in this HTML begin form. There is this specification of this type, encryption type, multi-part form data. I know that group 1 was using images. Is any other group using images or any other types of file? Okay. Once you have that, then this register student view sends you into this controller for registering, and this is the part I was mentioning. Once it succeeds, you basically get a role associated with the reason is you need an ID for this role, which you have to associate with the user. Okay, where am I getting this user ID from? This user ID is for the newly created student, right? So it's generated from the database. It comes from the database. So once it's succeeded, I have the newly generated user ID, but I have to associate it with that particular role ID. So that's why I went into the database to pull the role object out and associate it with the role ID. Otherwise, I could, I guess, hard code whatever that role ID is, pull it out and give it here. So that's how I connect a user with whatever new role. So when I create an instructor, register instructor should similarly have that connection set up here. So are there any questions on this? For especially the groups that are doing the registration, you need to be aware of it. And since none of you, other than group 1, is using the display, the displaying of an image is a little bit, it's not very obvious. So the place where it had to be, where it's students, let's see. Okay, right here, students, index, and I'm displaying the photo if the photo is not null. And what do you think this is doing here? This is the extra piece that you have to add in if you're getting some if you're getting like any type of data that's stored, an image or whatever bitmap that's retrieved from the database. If you want to display it, this was something we have not discussed much. What is happening here? When you come in here, this is basically saying take an action that is going to this class, to this method. Okay. So there is a controller called image controller that I've created, and its sole purpose, if you look at image controller, it just goes to the database, finds the student with that ID, and I'll show you where that ID is provided right here. And so essentially you have like a link being sent over, and it finds the associated student ID from the database, gets the image, and sends it back over to display. And if you're having PDF files or anything else, it's going to be somewhat similar, the logic. So that's one piece for registration. Preston was asking what are the other concepts that I would like for you to know, or with what I'm looking at on your individual projects. The other two interesting functionalities would be find prerequisites using that recursive approach, and the second is all the logic that goes into registering a student for a course. So if you're having any questions, ask me and I'll try to address it. Okay. So that's about it. Mike, do you have any other questions? Yeah. Okay.